Uchemo, just give me a second. We're just setting up. If you have any issues with the sound, just let me know. I'm going to put this up here. So this is the link, and we're going to put some links in the chat room as well. Just give me 1 second. Okay, so first of all, GMO greetings, I say everybody for joining in. So it looks like Zoom is working out some of their issues over the past couple of weeks because of the quarantine. Zoom has been sending out a message whenever we log in, letting platform facilitators know that some of the video may be slow because so many people are on Zoom. So some of the images may be slow to show up, or they may be not as clear, or a little bit blurred. But it appears on one hand that when you look at the recording, the images pop up at the right time. It's just live. Sometimes they don't pop up. But it's also looking like over the past week, they've kind of rectified some of that. So if we post something and you can't see it, just let me know in the chat room and we'll put the link. But it should, pop up within a minute or two. So if you can't see the image, just let me know. And sure we can, all right. Okay, so this particular course, once we did do a broadcast on this subject a few years back, but this is the first time we're doing a 6-week course on it because we want to go into some more detail about the subject. So on the flyer that you saw, ritual celibacy, cyclical fasting for alignment. So the key portion here is we're talking about fasting and praying and celibacy. That is part of the ascetic tradition of African ancestral religion and culture. That's part of priesthood and priestesshood, whether it's ancient Khanit and Kamit, as well as Yoruba tradition, Akan tradition, Congo tradition, certain purificatory rituals and so forth. But then also the Hoodoo tradition, the Juju tradition and so forth, purification, realignment, so we can make ourselves more receptive to the Abosom, the deities, more receptive to the Nananom and Samanfo, the spiritually cultivated ancestresses and ancestors of our direct blood circles. So this is why we engage in that. It has nothing to do with Christianity or Islam or Judaism or Hinduism or any of that nonsense. It has nothing to do with the pseudo-esoteric so-called expressions of Western pseudo-religion like Sufism or, Kabbalism or Gnosticism or, Vedanta or Jainism or Taoism, whatever it is. Buddhism has nothing to do with that. We've already had these practices before the whites and their offspring existed on Earth. The whites and their offspring were not leaving the caves of Eurasia and so forth, wearing animal hides and so forth and coming into North Africa and, the Near East where our people were and teaching us about meditation or fasting or, ritual celibacy and so forth. They weren't engaged in that. They learned about that by seeing and witnessing what our people were doing. If you can imagine these barbarians from Europe coming in contact with our people for the first time and seeing they're leaving caves and other places in Europe, the deserts of Eurasia and so forth, different places, coming into ancient Khanit and Kamit, seeing thousands of people walking around in white linen, huge temples, shrines, Meru pyramids and so forth, people engaged in ritual practices, seeing statues, golden statues of divinities, golden statues of ancestresses and ancestors, seeing our people going before these temple shrine ritual pieces and so forth, engaging in ritual song, ritual chant, ritual dance, spirit possession, spirit communication, ritual prayer, sacred writing and so forth. They're seeing all of this happen and they're trying to figure out what's going on. Of course, they start to try to imitate as the parasites that they are. And eventually they seek thousands of years later to try to rewrite the whole tradition and make themselves the center of it to enslave the minds of our people, which took thousands of years for them to pull that off, and it's wearing off already. So, but we want to get into our practices. Now, we utilize the term Ab, and as you see here, this is a Fang's piece from ancient Khanit and Kamit in the form of the Ab symbol, or the heart symbol. It's a sacred heart symbol. And you have the divinities inscribed on the heart symbol. We have an ancient Himat Toro, which is the wife of the god, Himat Toro, Amen, the wife of the god, Amen, and so forth, ancient priestess. And then you have the Sem, which is the form of priesthood in ancient Kemet. You see him wearing the Basa, which is the leopard skin, part of the sacred animal totem for that form of priesthood and so forth. He's pouring libation over the individual, a purificatory rite and so forth. So it's not just about priesthood and priestesshood. The priests and priestesses whose role as vessels of the Abosom deities, Akan for deities is Abosom, vessels for the Nananum and Samafo, which is the Akan term for spiritually cultivated ancestresses and ancestors of our direct blood circles, because they have that role as vessels for these spirits to operate through spirit possession, spirit communication, to communicate with the community through a physical vessel. Their ritual practices are more intensive and more frequent than the average individual, but we still have elements of everything that priests and priestesses do within our regular everyday activities. It's just not as intense and as frequent because we have different roles. But that's where the fasting and praying and celibacy and so forth, ritual celibacy comes into play for everybody at some point within different cycles of their lives. Now, we say here the Ab in the language of ancient Khanit and Kamit, as well as the Akan language, references the heart. Ab also means something pure as well as cessation. And so let's get into that. I'm going to pull up our document, a couple of documents as a matter of fact. And before we do that, I want to put a link in the chat room. Hold on 1 second. I'm going to put a link in the chat room for the Honam Su document so you can see it. So we're going to get to this document. We're putting the link in the chat room in a second. Okay. Okay, so this is from the dictionary, the Medutu, the hieroglyphs, and so forth. So you see the term Ab means heart. Sometimes they'll say heart of the soul, but it's the heart, the physical heart, but it also represents the spiritual heart as well. We have physical organs in our physical bodies that regulate order within our physical body and so forth, but then our spirit body has centers of resonance, and those same physical organs have spiritual components. So you have the radiant center of energy within the spirit body in the heart region, that is the Ab, the spiritual heart, just like you have the physical heart in the physical body and so forth. So you'll see Ab meaning heart. It can also mean middle, interior, like the heart of something, the middle of something, the interior of something. It can also reference sense, wisdom, understanding, intelligence, wish, will, desire, and so forth, mind, and all of that. Now, just to flip over real quick, when we look at the Honam Su, our Honam Su document, this is the document in the chat room, just to make a comparison. So we wrote this article, and you can look at the entire article, but we're talking about the spiritual anatomy, the Ba, the spirit, the Ka, the soul, divine consciousness, the Aku, the intuitive faculty, third eye faculty, and so forth. Ab, the spiritual heart, Hati, the heart-lung complex, the Sahu, the spirit body, Kahibit, the aura, the Sao, Su, the essential nature. All of those different components of the spirit body in the language of ancient Khanit and Kamit exist in the Akan language with the same names, of the same functions in Akan cosmology as they have in ancient Khanit and Kamit, because of course we're the same people. So we've done a 6-week course on this, and that course is archived, so you can access that 6-week course in the archives if you would like to do so. But just to get down to the comparison with regard to the Ab, the heart. So once again, we see in Kemet the term Ab, heart, also middle, interior, sense, wisdom, understanding, intelligence, attention, intention, disposition, manner, will, wish, desire. Then you have Abbo. So you have Ab in ancient Kemet, Abbo in Akan, which is the Ab, same term, chest, breast, bosom, but also when you get down to this section here, it says, as the seat of feelings, affections, and passions, the heart, courage. He has no courage to fight, meaning no heart to fight, and so forth. They're giving different examples, but the Ebbo is the seat of feelings and affections. It is the heart. Ebbo in Akan, Eb in Ejikamet, the heart, but also desire, will, intelligence, and so forth. Now, so just to show that we have the same representation, the same name for the physical aspect, but also the spiritual aspect, the immaterial aspect. So we know that, and this is the symbol for the heart, as we'll see, the Medut, the symbol for the heart. Now, Ab also means to be thirsty. The heart, you know, the desire, you have something in your heart, you have a desire for something, but it can also mean thirsty. You see the fluid here. It's not just thirsty in the sense of wanting to drink water and so forth, but the heart is drinking, the one that pulls in the blood and circulates blood throughout the body and so forth. So it is quote unquote thirsty. It's constantly receiving and transmitting blood, transmitting the purified blood, receiving the deoxygenated blood, purifying it through the heart-lung complex, and then sending it back out. So it's constantly moving the fluids throughout itself. It's quote unquote thirsty and satisfying that thirst so that we can live. So Ab can also mean thirst, which includes desire. But you also have Ab or Abit, meaning something pure or holy. And then Ab also meaning to cease, to stop, cessation. And then you have another version or spelling of Ab, meaning to stop, to cease, Abu meaning cessation, and then Ab being represented as a divinity, a god, a divinity, and so forth, with the determinative symbol of a divinity. So you have the Ab, which is the heart. It also means something pure, holy, and so forth, purified, but then also to cease, to stop, cessation. So there is a relationship with regard to purifying yourself, ceasing something, stopping something so that you can purify yourself, purify that thirst that you have and so forth. So your wishes, your will, your desire, as is shown here, is pure and manifests wisdom, understanding, intelligence, and so forth. So we're talking about what we feel through the heart, but also purifying ourselves, through the heart, through the act of cessation or stopping something, stopping that will or desire, that thirst for a second to purify ourselves so that we can move forward. So etymologically, all of these terms are related. Now, if we look at the physical heart, then we begin to see some representation that's dealing with the cosmology itself. So you have the left ventricle, left atrium, right ventricle. So what happens is, of course, your heart pumps out blood, it sends blood out through the left ventricle and so forth, and sends the blood out into the circulatory system. The blood carries life force energy, it carries oxygen and so forth, and the oxygen carries the life force energy, that divine living fire, sends it throughout the body. And so when the blood is sent throughout the body, the cells are, oxygenized and so forth, enlivened, vitalized, carries nutrients, and carries that living fire, that oxygen, to every cell in the body. That is through the arteries. Everything is distributed through the arteries. Then within the venous system, the veins capture the deoxygenated blood from the different organs and glands and regions and so forth, and carries it back to the right side of the heart, and it enters into the right side of the heart, and then it goes up into the heart-lung complex. That deoxygenated blood that also carries some debris and so forth, some pollution, that blood now goes through the heart-lung complex. The fire within the lungs, coming from the air and so forth, purifies and burns away the impurities, oxygenates the blood, fires it up. That divine living fire coming through the Aten, Atenith, the sun. When we breathe it in and so forth, we have the air, but we also have that solar fire, as we're going to see very quickly. And once that blood is fired up and oxygenized, then it returns to the left side of the heart, through the left atrium down to the left ventricle, and then is sent out through the left side to go back into the circulatory system, into the body. Now, why is that important cosmologically? In ancient Khanit and Kamit, the term for east, the east, abet or aptet sometimes, abet or aptet is the word for east, but it's also the word for left, the left side. And then ament, as well as amentet, is the word for west, but it's also the word for the right side. So in ancient Khanit and Kamit, we focused south. That's how we gained our bearings. Like in Europe, they placed north at the top of the compass because they wanted Europe to be on top of the map and Africa to be on the bottom. But of course, if you have a circle, what's on the top and what's on the bottom? Our people had south on the top and north on the bottom. And the proof of that, of course, is in the language. If you're facing south, well, if you point to the right, then that's west. If you point to the left, that's east. If you're facing north, it's reverse. So the only way east and left can be the same word, abet, is if you're facing south. The only way west and right, the direction right, can be the same word, ament, is if you're facing south. So that's important because when the sun rises in the east and then sets in the west, it rises in the aptet and sets in the ament. When it rises in the east and releases its fiery energy to flood the entire, landscape and so forth, that's rising in the east, the aptet in the left. In the same fashion, the heart releases the fiery blood, fire-filled blood and so forth, oxygenated blood in the left or the east, and then it's released throughout the body. And then it returns to the right side of the heart, to the ament, which is the west. The sun sets in the west. The blood that's deoxygenated, no longer has that life force energy in it at the same capacity. It returns to the right or returns to the ament. Then it gets purified and then it's sent out again through the right. So the same rising in the east and setting in the west and returning to rise in the east, cosmologically is manifest through the language and culture of ancient Khanit and Kamit, but biologically within us. So when we look at the heart, it's the repository of, energy and so forth. It's the repository of blood that's purified, cleansed, and everything else. But in the same fashion, the spiritual heart is the repository and the processor of our energic emanations. Physical heart, repository and processor of the blood that carries life force energy and nutrients. Spiritual heart, repository and processor of our energic emanations. Now, your brain also has a fourfold division, just like the heart has the fourfold division. If you look at the fourfold division of the heart, and when you make sure that your sound is on mute, but if you look at the fourfold division of the heart, we're going to look real quickly as a comparison with the fourfold division of the brain, just so you can see that. And this is from our book, The Okra Complex. Okay. So in our book, The Okra Complex, we're talking about the soul, divine consciousness. And what we're showing in this particular book is the soul, is the divinity in the head region. And we show a representation of that. So the term for soul, divine consciousness is Ka, male term, Ka'et, female term, and Akan is the Okra for males, Okrawa for females. It is the soul, the divine consciousness, the divinity in the head region. And the seat of the soul, so it's a personal divinity, the deity, that force that you feel in your head region that pulls you towards thoughts, intentions, and actions that are in harmony with divine order and disinclines you from thoughts, intentions, and actions that will place you out of harmony with order. Just like you have a fourfold division of the brain, the two right hemispheres of the cerebral cortex and the two hemispheres of the cerebellum that deal with consciousness and motor movement and so forth. And we show that fourfold division here that deals with consciousness, and you receive information, ideas, imagery, and all various kinds of things, and that is recorded and retained in the fourfold division of the brain, which is the physical seat of the Ka, the soul, the divine consciousness. Now, and we recognize, that role of the brain. The heart also has that major fourfold division, but instead of receiving the consciousness or ideas and imagery and so forth of all of our various experiences, the heart registers our energic emanations and energic experiences and retains those. Everything that we've ever experienced is retained in the region of the spiritual heart. This is why the heart is weighed against the feather of Ma'at at the end of someone's life, but also throughout the course of life. Every time you are confronted with a decision, your heart is weighed against the feather. So let's look at that imagery. So at the quote unquote judgment scene in ancient Khanit and Kamit, you see the deceased individual in this particular papyrus of Anui or Ani. He transitioned. This is his, the spirit of the individual. And his heart, his ab, is placed on the scale against the feather. And the feather, of course, is very light. So if you have a heavy heart because you've been harboring disorder, harboring sin, harboring disorder, self-destructive activity and so forth, and your heart becomes heavy, or depression or weakness and so forth, and your heart becomes heavy, then the scale balances tipped and so forth, and there's imbalance. But if your heart is light, because you're not harboring disorder and you're living in harmony with divine order and it's balanced, then it's as light as a feather. So when you transition, everything that you've ever experienced, the energic emanations of that is recorded, and the spiritual heart is a repository for that. So then that spiritual heart can be weighed against the feather to see if you lived in harmony with order, if you were holding on to disorder and it was weighing you down. The divinity of divine wisdom registers the results of the weighing. If you lived in harmony with order, then you can pass on to live with the Nanonoman Samanfo, the spiritually cultivated ancestresses and ancestors, in peace in the Sekhet Hetep, the divine field of peace, equilibration, and so forth. If not, that heart is consumed by Amut. She has the head of the crocodile, the body of the leopard, as well as the hippopotamus and so forth. The heart is ripped apart and so forth. Then you're one of these spirits that are not dwelling in a balanced fashion, but they're the kind of spirits that are plaguing other individuals. If they committed suicide by running into traffic on the expressway and got hit and died there, then their spirit is still near that ramp. Or if they got murdered and so forth on some corner, their spirit is still hanging around the corner, around the stop sign where they were gunned down. And every time someone stops at that sign, if they're a little receptive, they can feel negative energy right at that space and so forth. And they're causing people to have accidents or misreading, other people driving and so forth, and all kinds of things. They're disordered and they're projecting that disorder. And they're living a self-destructive and a tormentous spiritual life or existence. But if you lived in harmony with order, then you can pass that test and go on. After you pass this test, of course, you have to go through the test. This is in the hall of Ma'at, the dual hall of Ma'at. But then you have to go through the test of the male deity Ma'ah, the interrogatory with him, and we've done a class on that. And if you pass that, then you can be accepted. So, but that judgment scene takes place every time you make a decision in life as well. What direction are you going to go? If you're confronted with making this decision, going in harmony with order, or making another decision that will place you out of harmony with order, you are at the judgment scene instantaneously. And the direction you take will determine what impact it has on your spiritual heart and how it's weighed down or how light it is. So that's important. So now when we're talking about, in fact, let's look at a little bit more of the anatomy of the heart, because the heart with regard to desire and will, but also cessation, that's directly related to this notion of celibacy and fasting. Cessation, to become pure, to become holy, through cessation, for the heart, and so forth. So we're going to go to the Ojira Sem page on the website. I'll put the link in the chat room for that as well. So if you can't see it, then that's the link right there. Okay, so this particular article is Abba Nekabet, breath and the spirit, Ba and Ba'et. And of course, Abba is Nekabet, Abba and Akan. Thursday is Abada, or the day of Abba, as well as Ya, which is Wachet and Nekabet. Wachet and Nekabet is Ya and Abba and Akan. And then Yao is Heru. So Heru, son of Asar and Aset, Wachet and Nekabet are connected to Thursday and so forth, which is, important for today since this course is today. But we were talking about her role in the body and so forth, but we also touch upon the nature of the heart quickly. So the Ba, male, Ba'et, female, is the divine living energy moving through you. So your Ka is your soul, your divine consciousness, the divinity in the head region. But your Ba, or Ba'et, is your spirit, the divine living energy animating you, the divine solar fire animating you. So you have a spirit, Ba or Ba'et, divine animating force, and then you have a soul, which is in the head region, the consciousness. The whites and offspring give, misinformation about the nature of the soul and spirit and mix the terms up and so forth. But the Ka'et, the soul is a deity that's dwelling in your head region that you can communicate with him if you're a male, her if you're female. That's a deity assigned to you, and he or she dwells in your head region throughout the course of your life and guides you throughout the course of your life. That is a divinity. But then you have a Ba if you're male, Ba'et if you're female, divine living energy animating. So what we say is, as we draw in air and oxygen, we are also drawing in the solar fire of the Aten underneath the sun. The commingling of air, oxygen, and the solar fire within oxygen has its corollary within the commingling of the sacred Mut, the vulture, governing the lung structure. We show the great Mut, vulture, Nekabet, governing the respiratory system, and the two folded wings that expand and contract for air and so forth. There's the lungs that expand and contract, and the breast of the great vulture is where the heart is and so forth. So this great vulture animal totem is sitting within the chest and so forth, governing the respiratory system. As we can see, Abba in her female form, wearing the vulture headdress and so forth, governing the planet Neptune, but she governs the respiratory system. And as the great vulture, there's a great vulture sitting inside the body and so forth. So you breathe in air, but you also breathe in solar fire. So you have the Ba and Ba'et, the spirit, the divine living energy animating us, as we said, is the Ba for the man, Ba'et for the woman. Afurakani man, Afurakani woman, period. The Ba or Ba'et, your spiritual force, that divine living energy within you, is a child of the great divinity, Ra and Ra'et, the creator and creatress, called in Yonkompon and Yonkonton and Akan and Odumare and Oshumare and Yoruba and Dan, Ida, Huedo, and Vodun. Ra and Ra'et, the creator and creatress, the divine living energy animating creation, give birth to children, miniature Ba and Ba'et spirits, and direct those living entities to take up residence in our spirit body, as our spirit body and so forth. The divine living force in our spirit body directs one of their children as a divine spirit force to take up residence within our spirit bodies. This is akin to, if you think about the sun and a drop of solar light taking up residence in your body, that drop of solar energy, that fire that's dwelling within you, that sphere of fire that's dwelling within you comes from the original solar fire. It's a child of the original solar fire. Just like a drop of rainwater is a child of the great body of water, which is the ocean, that evaporates and goes up into the sky and falls back as raindrops and so forth. But that little drop of rain, H2O, is a child of the ocean. That little sphere of solar energy that's dwelling within your spirit body and so forth, animating you, that sphere of solar energy is a child of the great solar orb through which Ra and Ra'et operate. Now, we absorb the solar energy and heat through the breath. The solar energy is carried within oxygen through the bloodstream, thereby permeating the entire body. In the same fashion, the divine living energy animate within through solar fire permeates our entire physical body, spirit body. We're vitalized by the energy. It's also our energic link. So you'll see the Ba spirit, sometimes shown as simply a bird, sometimes a body of the bird and the head of the individual that spirit belongs to, and a bowl of burning incense with a flame arising, meaning it's a winged, animate fire, the burning bowl of incense. So the animate, winged fire within you is your divine living energy, sometimes shown as a bird with a solar disk on the head, meaning the animate, winged fire, solar disk that's moving and surging through you. That is your Ba, if you're a male, Ba'et, if you're female. That Ba and Ba'et, that spirit, is a child of the great Ba and Ba'et, which is the creator and creatress, Ra and Ra'et. And we show here that you have the spirit, the heart, the physical heart, as we said, but then the spiritual heart has the same structure, and the epicardium, that's the outside of the heart, but inside the endocardium, the inner chambers and so forth. That is the shrine for the Ba and Bayat. So we just wanted to point that out. You have a divine living energy animate within you. That same, so you see, for example, the deceased male and the deceased female. You see him being fed by the tree divinity, by Newt in the tree and so forth, being replenished. But his Ba, his spirit, is also being replenished. And then it's going to get back inside of him. That force is going to get back inside and possess him. She is being replenished by the spirit, the divinity, but her Bayat, her spirit, is also being replenished. And once it's replenished, it will fuse itself back inside of her. So you as an individual, you have a Ka, just like physically you have a brain that regulates order, and then you have a heart and cardiovascular system that has life force energy surging through it that animates every cell in your body and fires up every cell in your body. In the same fashion, you have a Ka, a Kayat, or a soul, a Ba, which is the soul, and then the Ba or Bayat, which is the spirit, the divine living energy that surges through you. Now, so you need to know about that architecture. Give me 1 second, let me pull this up. Okay, so we need to understand that architecture in order to understand the relationship between, you know, Ab being the heart, Ab dealing with cessation, Ab dealing with something pure or holy. As you can already see, the holy or purification aspect is when that divine living energy, the spirit that's descendant of Ra and Ra'at, that solar energy takes up residence inside you and animates you. In the same fashion, when the blood is sent throughout the body, comes back to the right side of the heart, and then is purified by the air of the lungs. It becomes holy or purified, and once it's purified and clean and so forth, then the blood is sent back out. Your spiritual heart, you receive energic emanations from, you know, interacting with individuals, plant life, animal life, mineral life, Afurakani, human life, ancestral spirits, deities, as well as our enemies, the whites and their offspring. Anytime people are acting, moving, or entities are acting, moving, and exchanging with you, they're projecting energy just like you are, and you're bombarded with that and you receive it. Now, you can receive those things that are harmonious and incorporate those things, that energy and so forth, and you should repel things that are disharmonious. If your immune system is working properly, you repel which is disharmonious and you receive what is harmonious. When you drink liquids or you eat food and so forth, your body processes it, takes out the nutrients so you can utilize that, but then creates waste to purge out of your body if everything is working properly. But if it's not, then your body will hold on to waste, you become constipated or something like that, get polluted, and then you cause problems in your physical body. When your spiritual heart, when you're in alignment spiritually, then yes, you're going to be bombarded with the energic projections of anyone you come in contact with, their mental projections, their energic projections, their intentions, their desires, and so forth. The same thing with animals, the same thing with plant life, animal life, mineral life, discarnate spirits of relatives and non-relatives, the divinities, your enemies, you know, our enemies and so forth. Everything is projecting some energy on some level. We're constantly being bombarded by that. Our physical heart or spiritual heart receives those energic emanations and it's a repository for that. But when you engage the ritual process, you purify and eliminate or burn out the projections that you don't need to hold on to, and the only thing that's left is that which is purified. But if you hold on to people's projections, negative projections and so forth, as well as your own internalized negative conditionings, your heart becomes heavy. It's not light because you haven't released the pollution. It becomes heavy. You say, well, I have a heavy heart and so forth. You can feel the heaviness of your heart sinks and so forth because you're holding on to something that becomes quote unquote stressful, and that leads to disease and so forth physically, but also spiritually can lead to mental illness, spiritual discordance and so forth. But if you're engaged in ritual process, then you purify that, and you repel the negativity, the disorder, and you only hold on to that which is harmonious. Therefore, the heart is light. just like physically the heart is fine. So, but you have to go through a purificatory process. And that's key to this quote unquote ascetic tradition that has always been part of our, our culture. Now, we also find that the term ab or abu, same term, means to dance. And a variation of that is AAB, that ab, which is the same as AABET, abet, which is the east, the left side, and so forth. There's a variation in the spelling, as you can see here. But it means to dance. When it says dance, it's talking about rhythmic. What is the rhythmic entity within the body? The heart is palpitating at a certain rhythm. When things are, hectic or fight or flight syndrome, then the heart starts beating very fast, palpitating very fast. When you cool down, the rhythm is very slow and so forth. But it's rhythmic, it's dancing, it's the drummer, it's the dancer within the body and so forth. So ab meaning heart, ab also meaning to dance or rhythmic, ab meaning thirsty and so forth. But ab also means purification, to be pure or holy. Ab also meaning to be cessation. And that cessation could be a temporary pause, or if it's cessation period, then once the ab engages in cessation finally, then that's the end of the life of the individual. It can be a temporary quote unquote pause for reconstitution or rejuvenation, reconstituting, yourself spiritually. But what is that having to do with rhythm, also connected to with regard to fasting, praying, celibacy, and so forth? Now we want to get into this whole notion of these circadian rhythms. But first, we had a question in the chat room. Okay, so the question in the chat room: if you don't pass the test, even though you tried, and now you're dwelling with the other spirits, how do you rectify that so that you can try again? So what happens is, hold on a second. So your heart is, and this is after transition, of course, even though it happens, every time you're confronted with a situation during the course of your life. But after transition, question is asking, if you don't pass that test, this is a measuring, and let's look at the imagery, as a matter of fact. You have a Council of Divinities here. You have Ra, Atem, Shu, Tefnut, Geb, Nut, Aset, Nebethet, Heru, Heru Kuti, and so forth, Het Heru, Hu, and Sa. So you have this Tribunal of Divinities. You have the feather of Ma'at. You'll see Ma'at. Sometimes you'll show Ma'at sitting here in the pan, but then sometimes you'll see her, in a different position. You have the male divinity Ma'a in the form of his sacred animal totem. So you have Ma'a and Ma'at, and he's sitting at the equilibration point, the balancing point of the scale and so forth. We did a whole class on him. So this is what's happening. And you see the Ba spirit. We talked about the Ba. The Ba is watching what's happening before it's going to get back inside of the spirit body of the individual. The Ba wants to see how did the person fare throughout the course of their lives. So this is an accumulation of your entire life. And once you began to engage the world as an adult, how did you live in harmony with order? Now everything has been registered in your ab, in your heart. The record is there. And you transition, and now that the record is written into the ab, then it's placed on the scale. So the results are going to be the results. If you did not pass that test, as well as the test with the male deity Ma'a, that extensive interrogatory that we talk about, then you'll be one of those earthbound spirits for a while. It may be 100 years, it may be longer than that. When you reincarnate and come back into the world and so forth, you have that opportunity. You can work on some spiritual development while you're in the spirit realm as well. Just like somebody who is homeless right now because they were self-destructive or got hooked on drugs and so forth, and they can't live in the family's home. They're not welcome in the family's home, or other people shun them. They're just out on the street and so forth. Some homeless people are just depressed or continue to do drugs and are self-destructive and so forth for years and years and years. Then you have some who recognize they made mistakes and they start trying to, regulate and change their behavior. In the same fashion, if you spent an entire life and it's recorded in the the spiritual heart that you were disaligned and so forth, then you're not going to be accepted amongst the pristine community of the Nsamanfo. But you have the capacity to begin to work on yourself. That's up to you. But when you return into the world 100 years later, 150 years later, however long it takes, born through one of your descendants and your spirit is drawn back into the womb and born once again, then you have that opportunity to execute the divine function you were designed to execute and, cultivate yourself spiritually. So it can start at that point and then, in the spirit realm and continue in the physical realm. And it's up to the individual to determine what they're going to do. Some spirits do not try to cultivate themselves, and they're those negative spirits that are hanging around that people have to do ritual work to repel them. Just like some homeless people will not try to cultivate themselves. They may even get violent with certain people for years, end up getting locked up and all kinds of things because they won't change their ways and so forth. But some, they do want to change their ways. So it depends on the individual. But let me know if that answers the question. So, let me see the. Yeah, so we need, not only should we clean up ourselves, that's the statement in the chat room saying we should clean ourselves up because 150 years is a long time. Not only should we clean ourselves up, but that's our responsibility, just as adults. Just like giraffes are designed to execute their function in a certain way, and that's what they do. Leopards, cows, bulls, deer, goats, everything has their own function and they live according to their function. We have a function, we're naturally inclined towards certain thoughts, intentions, and actions based on our spiritual makeup, our master plans and patrick plans and the abosom, the divinities that govern us. And it's our obligation as adults to function in that capacity. If we go against that, then we create disorder in our lives. So it's our divine obligation or mandate. Our lives don't simply belong to us. We are cells within the great divine body, the supreme being, just like your heart cells, liver cells, spleen cells, and so forth. They don't just exist in and of themselves. They are part of a larger organ, part of a larger system, part of a larger, you, the great body. So they don't have the opportunity or the leeway to just say, I'm going to live however I want to live. They're going to live in harmony with the form that they were fashioned to manifest in and the function that they were manifest or fashioned to execute, or they're going to be removed because the organism needs to continue and so forth. So that's our obligation. And that's key for our cosmology, our culture, because, listening to white culture, they'll say, well, I didn't ask to be born and, we should just be able to live and do whatever we want to do, whatever feels good until it's time to die because nobody knows what happens after death. All that is stupidity. And of course, the whites and offspring push that because they want us to be slaves to lust and misguided desire. But we have a culture, we have a way of life, and we know what the consequences are because we engage in spirit communication, ancestral possession. We know what happens after death. We go into the ancestral realm to see what people are doing. We know we have a role in creation of what can happen if we do not fulfill that. Day to day, not only just after death, but even day to day and the kind of consequences we, manifest day to day. So now, circadian rhythms. We talked about having to do with rhythm, the palpitations and so forth, but there are circadian rhythms that govern our entire lives. Of course, the sleeping and the waking state, but also dietarily, the best times of the day for consuming certain kinds of foods and their amount and so forth, including sexual activity and so forth. When you're not living in harmony with cycles, then you create disorder within your body because we live in harmony with the cycles that govern creation. And in fact, let's go back real quick to this link in the chat room. Okay, so going back to the at the top of this article, so we have the abosome that govern the solar, lunar, and planetary bodies that govern the 7-day week. Male and female divinities in the Akan tradition, but we show, of course, that the Akradim bosom are also the same divinities in ancient Khanit and Kamit. But the 7-day week is a 7-day cycle that's continuous and so forth. These planetary, solar, and lunar bodies constantly renew themselves. This 7-day cycle governs all kinds of physiological processes, chronobiological cycles and so forth, like the circadian cycle, the 7-day cycle and so forth, and has to do with a number of different things biologically. But we also show these 11 divinities governing the endocrine system, reproductive, immune, lymphatic, renal, nervous, cardiovascular, digestive, respiratory, exocrine, and skeletal. The 11 major body systems are governed by the 11 major abosome, who govern as males and females, the 7-day week, and the solar, lunar, and planetary bodies that govern all natural cycles on Earth. So these forces in nature are constantly renewing themselves, operating and manifesting in various natural cycles on Earth. We live in harmony with these cycles. Plant life lives in harmony with cycles. Mineral life lives in harmony with cycles. Animal life lives in harmony with the cycles. There's a rutting season, a mating season for different animals, and the way they digest their food, and when they hunt and so forth, and all the different things that they do is based on these natural cycles. We have those natural cycles as well. As Afro-Kani people, we are born and fashioned as part of the greater created order. We have natural places in these cycles, and the way we manifest behavior, if we're living in harmony with order, will be in relation to these cycles. In white culture, we're taught to live against cycles and just follow your lust and do whatever you want to do. So that creates disorder within us, which leads to lust, misguided desire, fulfilling that lust, and then we get out of cycle and we can't make good decisions. The two major drives of the Afro-Kani human being is the hunger drive and the procreative drive. The hunger drive is your inclination to consume so that you can live day to day. If you starve yourself, then you're going to die and so forth. So you need to have that basic drive for survival. That's the hunger drive. Then you have the procreative drive, or the sex drive, that allows you to live through generations through procreation. The sex drive, you draw in through copulation ancestresses and ancestors to bring them back into the world so you can live, your clan can live, and then you reincarnate through your descendants, and you perpetuate your life through generations. So the hunger drive, survival day to day. The procreative drive, or sex drive, survival through intergenerationally, through generational cycles. Those are the basic drives of existence. If we live in harmony with them, of course, everything's fine. If we get out of harmony with those basic drives, we are operating based on lust. We can't control ourselves. You can't control your hunger drive, and you can't control your sex drive, then that leads to disorder in your own physical life, your existence, disorder in relationships, disorder in familial relationships, communal relationships. And if you're building institutions, it causes the collapse of institutions. If you can't control your hunger drive, it leads to disease. It leads to obesity, it leads to heart disease, it leads to diabetes, it leads to emphysema, it leads to all kinds of things. You're not controlling the hunger drive, and that includes being lured into taking in things, consuming things that not only just food that kinds of food you don't need, or at a quantity that you don't need, but also other substances put forth by the white Sonora Spring, like heroin, crack cocaine, alcohol, marijuana, any drug that attacks. Drugs, of course, attack the melanin chemical in the body. This is why the whites in Narrow Spring are pushing the legalization of cannabis, and and eventually they're going to legalize or decriminalize first, but then legalize heroin and cocaine and everything else. That's always been on track and so forth. We've talked about this for years. We talked about this for years, over 10 years ago, when we were telling people they're going to legalize marijuana and so forth. And now it's actually, going on. But these drugs attack the melanin molecule within Afro-Akani people. So it's more devastating for us than any other group. And that's why it's designed and flooding our neighborhoods. So even when you're taking in, consuming substances that create disorder, that creates disorder in your own physical life, family life, communal life, nation building life. If you can't control your hunger drive, that's food as well as other substances. That leads to disease and your untimely death, but also disease within the family and community. If you can't control your sex drive, that can lead to diseases too, but it also leads to breakdown in family, breakdowns with regard to marriage, a breakdown with regard to institutions. When people are engaging in fornication, promiscuity, and so forth, negative emotions manifest from that. You become negatively magnetic to discarnate spirits that are controlled by lust as well. So you engage in lustful activities, engage in promiscuity with individuals you're not married to, or cheating on husbands or wives and so forth. You're not only creating negative energy with regard to that relationship and those who you're connected to, but also discarnate spirits that are controlled by lust. You draw those kind of spirits in as well. And then they begin to influence you because your spiritual immunity is compromised, and they have more influence on you as well. So then you make even more bad decisions, at least bad decisions with regard to finance or education or what kind of business you're going to build or what you're going to support. And it causes a collapse. You have people who build institutions in the community and so forth, educational or engineering or whatever it is. And then after years and years of doing some kind of good work in the community, then the whole organization falls apart because there's infidelity, there's promiscuity, there's idiocy going on, and that tarnishes everything that's ever been done. And when people say, well, that shouldn't tarnish the 20 or 30 years of the work that these individuals have been doing, yes, it should, because we should make an example of them, and that's the end of everything that they've done. If they're so foolish and self-destructive and childish to want to throw away everything they've done just so they can satisfy a misguided desire, then they deserve to be made an example of, and everything they've ever done is discounted, and they lose everything that they have. That's always been our way. So, and we need to return to that. We can't continue to build institutions and move in a certain direction, and then the immature, quote unquote, leaders of the institution, because they can't control their sex drive or their hunger drive, cause the destruction of the institution because they can't control or regulate basic drives of life. That comes from the whites and their offspring. That is not our culture. We learned about regulating the Ab, the spiritual heart, from the time we're children. We establish ancestral shrines, and the children start going to the ancestral shrine when they're babies and so forth, and learning how to walk and go into the shrine. They learn how to cleanse their spiritual head and so forth so they can have the right focus. Then they learn how to engage in ritual practices so they can start regulating their energy that's moving through the spiritual heart and so forth. They start learning about regulating the hunger drive and the procreative drive from the time they're children, and when they move into puberty, manhood training, womanhood training, and so forth, then they develop their sexual characteristics as far as their capacity to be able to bring in ancestor and ancestors back into the world through procreative activity. They begin to learn how to regulate that energy that's moving through the Ab, the heart, and so forth, so they don't fall into these self-destructive patterns. And they learn that early on as teenagers, so they're just not running around being pulled in all different directions. When you have a real culture in place, the people who are teenagers and go through rites of passage, they're not just so controlled by promiscuity that they can't control themselves. They know what the cosmology is. They know how to engage in certain ritual practices. They know how to redistribute their energy to other parts of the physical and spirit body, so that's not polarized in the sex organs and so forth, and they're not running around out of control. And then if they have that misguided desire, they're used to going to the shrine of their kra, cleansing their head and so forth, and removing that disordered, thinking of those negative projections, purifying themselves and so forth. Or they're used to going to ancestral ritual with the family as well as individually. They're used to purifying their head when they go to the river of the divinity that governs their Patrick land and so forth. So even if they start veering mentally, when they engage the ritual process, they get back on track before they make the mistake. But if you don't have any of that in place, and the best you have is a fake religion like Christianity or Islam that says, hey, you better not do this because the devil is watching you or God's going to be angry, how has that worked out? Look at the birth rate amongst teen pregnancy and everything else, or just even with adults, all the different diseases, all the different out of wedlock children, all of the organizations and families and so forth that have been broken apart because people can't control their sex drive. Look at the health condition of our people. When they talk about all this COVID-19 and all of our people having these pre-existing conditions that lead to, suffering greatly or dying, because once that respiratory infection gets in them, they already had heart disease, they were already obese, they were already controlled by liver disease and diabetes and all these different things, then any other, ailment that comes to them, it can cause a problem where they fall apart. So we need to get back to normal, our normal way of operating, functioning, and this quote unquote ascetic tradition has always been part of our culture. It has nothing to do, as we said, with the whites and our offspring. Well, so we're talking about cycles. That 7-day cycle is a major cycle. The circa-septan cycle is a major chronobiological cycle, a 7-day cycle. And we've had that in our Akan tradition for thousands of years. Now, so let's get up to the so we have these circadian rhythms, and this is just a basic chart, but if you look at it, sunrise, here, rise in blood pressure, melatonin secretion stops, highest testosterone secretion is around 10 o'clock. Now they have highest risk of myocardial infarction, which is heart attack and so forth, but that's, if somebody's, not in good health. Best coordination, greatest cardiovascular and muscle strength around the 2 o'clock, 3 o'clock, 4 o'clock area and so forth. So even when you're looking at what's a good time to engage in physical exercise and so forth, what's the best time to eat a heavy meal? What's the best time to eat a cool meal? What's the best time to study? We have this, natural circadian rhythm, and we can naturally attune our activities to that. So do animals, plant life and so forth. Instinctively, they adhere to that, and their activities reflect that. When we're living in harmony with our natural culture, we live in harmony with the cycles in nature, and we operate accordingly. So greatest cardiovascular and muscle strength, highest blood pressure at this point, but then highest body temperature. Then you get into the evening period. Melatonin secretion starts. Then you get down to midnight, deepest sleep around 2 a.m., 3 a.m. and all of that, lowest body temperature, all these different things. And then you look at, wake and feeding, the liver, glycogen, cholesterol, bile and acid synthesis, pancreas, insulin secretion, fat, lipogenesis, all of that, muscle, fatty acid synthesis, all these different things happening during the waking and feeding cycle. And then sleep and fasting cycle. Of course, breakfast is breaking the fast and so forth that you had at night. The liver, gluconeogenesis, and pancreas, and fat and muscle, all these different aspects of what's happening, in that nighttime cycle, the sleep cycle, the fasting cycle. So biologically, there are certain things that are in harmony with order, and you look at the kind of activities you engage in, the kind of foods that you intake, and what times of day that you do that, or times of night if you're eating at 2 and 3 in the morning. what should be happening. There's also points when you look at these cycles about what's the time, best time to have a, you know, elimination and so forth, when that takes place during the day, what's the best time for that and everything. So when we look at these different cycles and we look at ourselves, we start realizing we are elements within creation, just like plant life, animal life, and mineral life. We have natural cycles. We need to start living in harmony with those. Then when you learn about the divinity that governs your head, you have, you know, and the patriclan and matriclan divinities, which we're going to get into in the coming weeks. Then you begin to understand that there's a specific role. You have a natural circadian rhythm that everybody has, but then your unique expression of that is based on the energic force that governs your head, and the patriclan and matriclan abosome that are connected to you as well, that creates an energic complex that's unique to you, and how your unique energic complex should move through this circadian rhythm. But that includes the waking or the feeding cycle, or the sleep and the fasting cycle. So these things are all connected. Now, let's look at the cosmological foundation for that. And even if we look at Alsar and Alset, at some point, Alsar is killed and so forth. Eventually, he's resurrected. But when he's killed, of course, there's no, you know, sexual activity. There's no copulation for him. There's no copulation for Alset. Eventually, she finds the body of Alsar. Her spirit connects with his. She becomes pregnant with Heru and so forth, gives birth to Heru. He's the one who's going to come and overthrow the disorder, manifest through Set and his followers and so forth, and restore the kingdom and queendom. But when you look at Alsar, mummified and so forth, that's part of that whole notion of asceticism. When you look at Alset, when she's traveling around the country looking for the body of her husband and so forth, she's not engaged in promiscuity and sexual activity with other individuals. She's only going to connect with the individual she needs to connect with at the time. She needs to connect with him sexually and so forth to bring forth the power necessary to overthrow disorder. When we live in harmony with order and we can control our hunger drive and our procreative drive, then we have access to our spiritual power and we can regulate our spiritual power. If we allow ourselves, our power to be dissipated because it's scattered, because we're feeding lust and so forth, then we're not exercising our full power. We're not utilizing the power of the solar fire energy of the Ba and Ba'et. And therefore, we can just be pulled in different directions easily. And we've seen that happen. Some of the largest organizations in our community, whether they were culturally grounded or brainwashed, Christian, Muslim, Hebrew, whatever it is, even within those organizations, even if they were trying to do something at the top, you still see these people cannot control their sex drive, having sex with the young women and so forth, impregnating people. You have holistic health physicians talking about holistic health and diet and what we need to do as a people in cycles. And these old males are impregnating women 30 and 40 years younger than them. They're still running around, quote unquote elders, but you're not an elder if you're still running around chasing somebody who's 30 and 40 years younger than you. That's idiotic. But some of our people give these Negroes a pass because they think they're grandmaster teachers and all this other nonsense. Or individuals in the quote unquote ancestral religious community, so-called African traditional religion community, talking about nation building, talking about this and that, and they still can't stop trying to run behind young women who are 20, 25, 30 years younger than them, still trying to have sex with them and everything else. And on the other side, cannot control their hunger drive. If you can't control your basic drives, how can you administer the affairs of a nation, administer the affairs of a grounded institution, if you can't administer your own affairs internally? That's not part of our culture, to be controlled by lust and misguided desire. The first thing we do is govern that. We learn that as children, and then everything else unfolds for us. So there's, within the story of Alsar and Alset and Heru, there's that story of purification, mummification to a certain extent as part of a cycle. It's abstinence, even a 70-day cycle when they go through the mummification process for 70 days. That's a cycle of abstinence. Then there's a spiritual reunion. That's a cycle of abstinence for Asar, and his spirit. That's a cycle of abstinence for Aset. Then there's a spiritual reunion, and then there's another cycle of abstinence and so forth. You'll even see here, this is Aset. You see her crown here. This is from the tomb of Seti. Asar is mummified. And you also see the Ba'et, the spirit of Aset, her Ba bird, her spirit, divine living energy, that solar bird. And you see her name, spirit, spelled here, the throne with the T, the Aset. So this is her spirit. This is Aset herself. And you can see her crown, the Aset crown, that's Aset. And some people have misconstrued this image because they see Aset here, but then they see the bird and it says Aset, and they're like, oh, well, she's bilocating, and she's not. This is Aset, and her divine living energy is connecting with the divine living energy of Asar, whose spirit is within this crystallized form, this mummified body, but his Ba is within that. And her Ba is connecting with his, her Ba'et is connecting with his Ba. Her divine living energy is connecting with his. You'll see it's damaged, holes here is damaged and so forth. This is the phallic symbol of Asar, so that's representing that spiritual union. Now, some people will say, well, this represents when Aset, when her spirit, came to the body of Asar, she became impregnated. This is why they have the erect phallus and so forth. And then she got impregnated with Heru, and then eventually she gave birth to Heru, and he would come and change the, situation and overthrow Set and so forth. However, this particular scene is not that, because at the other head of the bed, the funerary bier is Heru. As you can see by his spelling of his name with the falcon, Heru, he's full grown here. So clearly she's not being impregnated by Asar. Her son is already here, full grown. So this is the notion of that second resurrection. When you hear about the second resurrection in Christianity, that nonsense and its corollaries in, Islam and Judaism and so forth, this is where it comes from. The first resurrection is when Asar is murdered. She eventually finds his body and her spirit connects with his. She becomes pregnant with Heru. Heru grows up to defeat Set and restores order in the nation. The second resurrection is after Asar's body is purified. It was drawn from the water because he was thrown in the water. They captured him from drowning, but his body was mummified and so forth, purified. Then the spirit connected with Ra to become a force in nature and the spirit that governs the ancestral realm. That was the second resurrection. The first resurrection is Aset finding him and becoming pregnant to give birth to Heru. The second resurrection is after all that took place, after Heru overthrows Set. Now Asar becomes the king in the spirit realm and Heru becomes the king in the physical realm. This is dealing with the second resurrection. And that's very important because there's a chapter in the Rudu Perdem Heru, the so-called Book of the Dead, Book of Coming Forth by Day, talking about the chapter of not dying a second time. And that chapter also is directly related to this notion of ritual celibacy. It's a contextual or a textual reference and cosmological foundation for ritual celibacy and cyclical fasting. So let's see why that is. And that's information the Whites and Offspring are unaware of, that we're bringing out, and then they're going to copy it at some point. So let's go to the Rudu Perdem Heru and see where that's at. And so first, let me see. Okay, so first we're going to expand that so you can see it better. Give me 1 second. Okay, so first we're going to look at page, the chapter. Now, some people will attempt to say that, you know, celibacy and so forth and fasting has something to do with early Christian fathers, which is idiotic, or has to do with Hinduism, and we're trying to import, you know, Hindu practice. Even some people with vegetarianism thinking that has something to do with Hinduism, as we published on that, which is idiotic. But these individuals who claim to be scholars or claim to be experts in ancient Khanit and Kamit, they're not. Whether they're going back and forth to Kamit for years or call themselves elders and eldresses or priests and priestesses, none of them are experts on anything. They allow their people to call them that, but they are not that at all. So if you're practicing ancestral religion from an authentic perspective, born of the blood circles of your people who maintain the traditions for hundreds of years in North America, like the Hoodoo tradition and Juju and Voodoo and Wanga and so forth, these are the same traditions of Akan and Yoruba and Ebe and Ovambo and so forth, going back to Western Central Africa and the same traditions with the same deities by the same names that we still communicate with from ancient Khanit and Kamit. So we have an unbroken tradition. People who just make up Kemetic traditions, change their names, and just imitate what they see on the walls and so forth, that doesn't make you an expert on the tradition. That just makes you someone who's imitating and trying to recreate something and so forth. Or people writing about some information without any grounding in ancestral religious practice. You can't write about Asar, Aset, and Heru and call yourself an expert in that, and you've never invoked them or communicated with them. And you don't know which of these divinities govern the head and so forth. So when we look in one of the particular chapters, looking at chapter 30, we don't have to go through this whole section, just one reference. There's one particular chapter, and it says in the text, when is known this chapter, it makes a man to triumph on earth, and in the spirit realm, he performs works and lives upon things after the manner of the great of the divinity. Now, this is in the text itself. It says, was found this chapter in Kimenu upon a slab of iron of the south, inscribed with the lapis lazuli, real under the 2 feet of the majesty of the divinity, of this divinity, in the time of the majesty of the Ancestral, the king Men Ka Ra, by the royal son Heru Dadaf Ma'al Keru. He found it in his journeying to make an inspection in the temples. Was strength with him to make him diligent in understanding it. He brought it as a marvelous thing to the Ancestral, the king, when he saw that it was a mystery, that a mystery it was great, unseen and unbeheld. So they're saying this particular chapter of the Runu Perde Meru, right here in the text, the ancient scribe is saying, actually, this chapter was found inscribed when Heru Dadaf, he was inspecting the temples one day, and he found this chapter, and it was an ancient chapter, and he brought it back to the king and said, listen, look at what I found. This is an ancient work of the ancestresses and ancestors. And he studied it to understand it, And they said it was found on it was inscribed on a slab of iron and so forth with lapis lazuli, and they restored it. Just like if we found an artifact and it was 3,000 years old, and we say, hey, this is an artifact from our ancestresses and ancestors. It's very important. Let's preserve it and share it like we're doing right now. He did that over 3,000 years ago, 3,500 years ago. He found something that was over 1,000 years old, and he brought it back to the sovereign, and they recreated it, reprinted it and so forth, reinscribed it, because it was a work of the ancestresses and ancestors, and it was sacred. So this is going back thousands of years. So this sacred chapter that he found 3,500 years ago, but it was also 1,000 years older than him. This chapter, it says, shall be recited, this chapter, by a person purified, Abu, purified and washed, one who has not eaten animal flesh or fish. So this is an ancient chapter that was already, they're putting it out 3,500 years ago, but it was inscribed from something they found that was over 1,000 years older. So we're going back, 4,500 years. We're talking about when you're engaged in this ritual process and you're reading this chapter and utilizing the ritual prayers and chants in this chapter, you should be abstaining from animal flesh or fish. That's veganism, going back, 4,500 years ago, before there was a such thing as any Hinduism or anything else. So any fool talking about we never engaged in that, here's the cosmological foundation in the text written by the people themselves. That's just one instance. Of course, there's been studies done studying the isotopes of mummies going back from the pre-dynastic period all the way through to the Greek period. And when they did the analysis on mummies from all periods and did the accumulation of data, it was found that the diets of the people were typically vegetarian. That's just a recent corroboration of what our people have been talking about. So we can't listen to these self-proclaimed experts because they're not experts on anything. Now, that's one particular text. So there's a cosmological foundation there, but let's look at the chapter of not. So this is the Papyrus of Ani, page 88, Budge's version, the Dover edition version, and so forth. You can go on archive.org and download the Hoodoo Pertinent Hoodoo, so-called Book of the Dead, for free, different versions of it, as well as other sites, but archive.org is one of the sites to get free books. So this is the chapter of giving the the heart, to Asar Ani, the one who transitioned. This is the papyrus found in his tomb and so forth. A chapter of giving the heart to this individual, Asar Ani, to him in the spirit realm. And the same chapter is read in the ritual invocation for anybody who transitions. But recall, any one of these ritual invocations are also used during life, because there's a parallel between what we do in the spirit realm and what we do here. So Ani says, may my or my heart be to me in the house of Abu hearts. May my hati, which is the heart-lung complex, be to me in the house of the hati. May be to me my heart. May it rest, hetep, equilibration in me. I shall not eat the cakes of Alsar on the east side of the Lake of Flowers. A boat in thy going down the river, Nile River, Hapi River, and you're sailing up, nor shall I advance to the boat with you. May be to me my mouth that I may speak with it, my two legs to walk, my two hands and arms to overthrow my enemy. He's talking about here, transition, a spirit in the spirit realm. He wants his heart to be returned to him. He doesn't want the heart to be eaten up by that Amut, the monster. He's saying, I passed the test. May my heart be in me so that I can, don't let it be ripped out of me. You know, the center that regulates, balance, just like your heart regulates the flow of blood and so forth. The spiritual heart regulates that balance, regulates the flow of divine living energy. If it's ripped out of you, then there's chaos. Don't let my heart be ripped from me by Amat, because I lived in harmony with order. I can prove I lived in harmony with order. If you search my heart, you'll see that I lived in harmony with order, and I have a balanced heart. Hetep means peace and equilibration, but it deals with balance. So this is part of that ritual invocation. And because I lived in balance, may be to me my mouth that I use for ritual invocation, that I may speak with it, my two legs to walk, my hands and arms to overthrow my enemy. Once I lived in harmony with order, I wasn't controlled by lust, misguided desire, and all of that. The divine living energy, the solar fire that's coming from that solar bird is moving through my spirit body, and I will control over it harmoniously. Now I can speak ritual invocation. I have control over my arms, control over my legs. I can overthrow my enemy. I'm not controlled by my enemy physically or spiritually. If my heart was out of order, then my enemy can control me. I can't control my arms. I can't control my legs. I'm controlled by lust, misguided desire, promiscuity, foolish ideas, controlled by my enemies. All of that is messed up. But if I regulate my heart and it's equilibrated, then I can speak truth. I can invoke through ritual invocation, evoke through ritual evocation, and so forth. And I have control over my arms, my hands, my legs, and I can overthrow my enemy. Then it says, be open to me the doors of, hold on a second. Be open to me the doors of the heavenly realm. May unbolt for me Seb, the earth divinity, the chief of the divinities, his two jaws for me. May he open my two eyes, which were blinded. May he make to stretch out my feet, which were fastened together. May make strong Anpu my legs to rise up for myself. Make me to rise, Sekhmet, the female divinity, that I may be in heaven, being done what I commanded in Het Pataka, the house of the soul of Ptah, and so forth. And then he says, and this is for males as well as females, eat the text. I know my Ab, meaning I know my heart. I have gained power, Sekhem, over my Hati, my heart-lung complex, the region that purifies, the blood and so forth, and purifies the energy. I've gained power over my Hati, the heart-lung complex. I've gained power, Sekhem, over my two hands and arms. I've gained power over my feet. I've gained power to do what pleases my Ka, the divinity in my head region. Then he says, not shall be in prison my Ba, meaning my spirit, with my body at the gates of the spirit realm, the gateway to the spirit realm, Amentet the West, at my entrance in peace and coming forth in peace or equilibration. So when your heart is in harmony with order, you have power of your legs, your arms, your actions, your enemies. You have the power to do what your Ka pleases, the will or desire of the Ka, the divinity in the head region, divine consciousness that has the blueprint of everything you're supposed to do on earth. Just like your brain has the blueprint of everything that should happen in the body, your spirit brain, the energy in the head region, has the blueprint of what your role is in creation. You should only be following thoughts, intentions, and actions that are in alignment with what the Ka or the Kite is directing you to do. If you're trying to do something else that displeases your Ka, then you create disorder. If you live in harmony with divine order, you're living in harmony with the divinity in the head region. When your heart is balanced, hetep, in a state of equilibration, then you have power over your arms, legs, feet, enemy, everything. And your Ba, your divine living energy, he says, shall not be in prison. But if you don't have power over your heart, if you're not regulating your heart, meaning heart, meaning desire, meaning holy or pure, meaning cessation, that includes you have the capacity to stop and not move forward and be drawn into lust or gluttony or promiscuity. Can you engage in cessation and stop that? Can you control yourself? or not. But if you're living in harmony and so forth, and your heart is balanced, equilibrated, then your Ba is not imprisoned. Your divine living energy is not imprisoned. It's not controlled. So that's the first cosmological foundation for this notion of ritual celibacy, ritual, fasting. But now there's another piece, which goes even more directly to this understanding. And we have to lay the foundation first, and eventually in the class we'll talk about a kind of a fast and kind of diet and things like that. But first we have to lay the cosmological foundation of what we're talking about. Okay, so I just want to make sure I didn't miss any questions. Okay. Okay, so when we get to chapter so this is chapter 125. And if you look at this particular chapter, the first part, we don't have to go into the entire thing. Well, we can go ahead and do that. Well, the first part we can just go through kind of quickly, but we want to get to the second part. But okay, so once again, it's the chapter of not dying a second time. We talked about the second resurrection, dying a second time. The first, how could you die a second time? We showed Al-Sar with the second resurrection. The first resurrection, he was murdered by Set, thrown in the water and so forth. Al-Set finds his body, purifies him and so forth, and their spirits unite. She becomes pregnant with Heru, and Heru takes over, wages war against the followers of Set and so forth, and restores the nation and the empire and so forth, and he's the ruler. Then the second resurrection is when they mummify Al-Sar, raise him up, and then he becomes a divinity in nature and the sovereign of the spirit realm, while Heru is the sovereign of the physical realm. Now, and Al-Sar is in the head region with regard to the pituitary gland, the master gland in the body, head of the endocrine system and so forth, and Heru is sitting in the heart. So Al-Sar, his central seat in the pituitary gland, in the quote-unquote heavenly realm, the head region, and Heru, the central seat in the heart, in the earthly region, below the neck and so forth, the heavenly and earthly and so forth. You have the earthly king and the spirit king and so forth. And you also have Al-Set, the queen mother. She's one of the lobes of the pituitary, and Al-Sar is the other lobe. And then you have Het Heru as well in the heart, which we're going to be getting into. But so that was the first resurrection. And the second resurrection, when Al-Sar becomes a divinity in nature. And he becomes the king of the divinities in nature. So, but this is a chapter of not dying a second time. How do you die a second time? We know this from our direct experience of dealing with the Nananoma and Samanfo and our Samanfo Pa, the ancestral spirits. In the Hoodoo tradition, Juju tradition, and so forth, we don't speculate about what happens after death. We communicate with the deceased. We don't speculate about what happens after death. We go into the spirit realm and interact with them in the spirit realm to see what's happening after death and see how people are faring after death. We engage in ritual communication, spirit possession, spirit communication, and so forth. So we know exactly what's happening. So when we look at this and it's talking about not dying a second time, we already know exactly what it is because we have direct experience, as opposed to some pseudo-Egyptologist or somebody who's imitating what Egyptologists have to say, and they're Black, and they say, well, we're studying chematology, but they're simply repeating and blackening up the misinformation of Egyptologists. We live these texts every day, so we have direct insight into what they're talking about. The whites and offspring don't have that unless they ask a Black person or observe what we're doing. Chapter of not dying a second time. The first death, of course, is when you transition, your spirit leaves the body, your body is interred, and now you've left the physical, earthly community. You can communicate with them spiritually through spirit possession and different things, but you're not living amongst them, you're not interacting with the family physically and all that. Hold on 1 second. All right, so I remember to make sure your phone's mute, so there's no background noise. So that first separation is separating from the earthly family. Now you're in the spirit realm. Now, if you go to the community of your grandparents, great-grandparents, great-great-grandparents, great-great-great going back thousands of years, that community of Nsamanfo, if you live in harmony with order, you'll be accepted amongst that community. But if you don't pass that test, then instead of dwelling with that community, you're repelled from that community. You already were separated from the earthly community. That was the first death. You're separated from the earthly community. Your spirit leaves your body. You're no longer directly interacting with them, so that's the first death. Then you try to go amongst the ancestral community to live in peace for the next 100, 150 years and so forth. If you were living out of harmony with order, then you're repelled from that community. So you can't be with that community. You can't be with the earthly community. That was the second death. You don't want to die a second time, because now you're an earthbound spirit. If you die one time, you went into the spirit realm, you passed the test, and you were drawn to live with the spiritually cultivated ancestresses and ancestors. Now you're living in a harmonious community. In the Akan tradition, they say, or we say, if you want to know what the ancestral realm is like, consider the sleep state. And when you communicate with deceased relatives in dreams and so forth, and you have great, interactions and so forth, that's exactly how it is after transition. Your spirit is communicating with other spirits, and you have a harmonious existence. Now, if you get repelled from that community, just like physically, if you were robbing, stealing, child molester and so forth, and you tried to go to a family reunion and you knocked on the door, people try to kill you, or definitely you would not get in the house. You're repelled from that community and you can never come back. And you're repelled from other communities, you can never come back. So you may be a homeless person out here in the street. And you may be, you could succumb to people who rob homeless people, kill homeless people, torture homeless people. You're just out here. The same thing spiritually, if you're out of harmony with order, you get repelled because your spirit is a disordered spirit. You're repelled from that community of ordered spirits, just like a magnet pushing another magnet across the table with the same polarities facing. You're repelled. You can't become part of that community. You're repelled because of the nature of your disordered spirit. So you're not able to get into that vicinity and dwell in that community. So that's a second death. And now you can succumb to all the other spirits who are disordered like you have become. And they're attacking and pulling on you just like someone who's homeless and other homeless people are attacking and pulling on them. There's a problem. Okay, so hold on 1 second. So that's that second death. And this is the chapter of not dying a second time. And this is where we get the full cosmological foundation for what we're dealing with. So the first part is laying a little foundation, and then we're going to get into the second part we want to highlight. Okay, so hold on 1 second. Move this to the side. All right, so it says, this is what Ani, Osar Ani Ma'akeru says. It says, Hail to Huti. What is it? He's asking the male divinity of divine wisdom, what is it that has happened to the children of Nut? They have done battle. They have supported strife. They have done isfet, meaning order, disorder, evil. They have created the fiends. They have made slaughter. They have created troubles. But surely they have worked the mighty against the weak in all of their deeds. grant then might of Tahuti what has decreed Atem. So he's asking the divinity Tahuti, the divinity of divine wisdom, what's happened to these people? Look at what these people are doing. Some of these people are doing on earth. They're creating strife. They're putting the strong against the weak. They're engaged in disorder. Okay, we're seeing what's going on. I don't like what I'm seeing. Grant me, Tahuti, the mighty one, what has decreed Temu, Atem or Temu. And then he says, not see you evil, and not you will not see evil. Not are you enraged when they confuse their years and go in amongst their monks, because they have done iniquity, secret, in what they have done against you all. I am your palette, Tahuti. I brought to you your ink jar. Not am I among those who work iniquity or disorder in their secret. Not they may be done disorder or iniquity to me. So he's asking the divinity of divine wisdom, what's happened to these people? They're doing all this kind of disorder. But listen, I'm your palette. You know, Tahuti is the divine scribe and so forth. He has the palette and the ink jar. The person is saying, hey, I'm like your palette. You can write upon me because I'm in harmony with order. I'm balanced, I'm equilibrated, I've passed that test. Please do for me what the deity Atem, who concretizes or completes creation, what he has decreed. Because I lived in harmony with divine order, so please do not allow disorder to affect me. And once again, the heart weighed against the feather. This is reflecting that. You already saw Tahuti with his pen adjudicating the matter. He's, as the scribe, writing down the results of the weighing. So when the person says, listen, my heart has been weighed against a feather, I lived in harmony with order, I would like to not be caught up in the nonsense of these people engaged in disorder. I want to go to the Sekhet, include the divine fields of peace and so forth. I want to be living the way Atem has decreed that the people who lived in harmony with order should live. I'm your palette, so please let that happen. Now, then we get to this section. Then Asar Ani says, the person who transitioned, and this is what we should be saying when we transition as well, but also during life. Then he goes to the divinity Atem. You see Atem in the setting sun. He concretizes creation. He's a functionary of Ra and so forth. He's a spiritual force in the red setting sun that brings an end to the day, but completion, finality, concretizes creation and makes things real. He says, Hail Atem, what is this which I have, this place to which I have come into? But surely without water it is, without air it is, doubly deep, darkened, doubly remote. So he's been drawn into a place. He already asked Tahuti, listen, can you make sure I don't get caught up with these disordered individuals? I lived in harmony with order. I would like to experience everything that the deity Atem has decreed. Then the next phase is, okay, well, this is what's going to happen. And he's placed in front of Atem, and Atem takes him into a place, and he says, Atem, what is this place that I've come into? It doesn't have water. There's no air. It's doubly deep, doubly dark, and doubly remote. Now we're talking about the black substance of space. He who lives in it, and as you can see here, there is peace of heart, or hetep ab, equilibrated heart, or balanced heart. Then it says, not, but are not performed nechimi. And this is the key point, so I want to expand it. Now, okay, hold on one second. It says, but not are performed netchimit, and you see the erect phallus with fluid release, and they translate it as love joys. So it says, but not are performed the joy of love within it, within this place. He's like, what is this place you just took me to? I asked Tahuti, listen, do for me what Atem has decreed. I lived in harmony with order. My heart is balanced. I don't want to get caught up in the disorder of these other individuals. Tahuti is like, okay, I'm going to sing you to Atem, the one who's decreed or concretizes creation and finalizes the divinely ordered creation. He's drawn before Atem, and he's taken into the black substance of space, and he's, what is this place I'm in? It's doubly dark, doubly deep, doubly remote. There's no water, there's no air, but there's contentment of heart or balance. Hetep Ab, the heart is balanced here, but there are no netchimit or joys of love performed in it also. Where am I at? And then it says, it doesn't say made there, it just says erta na, meaning Atem is responding, saying, I have erta, I have given aku, which is illumination, in place of water and air and netchimit, quote unquote, love joys or the joys of love or the action of love and copulation. I've given hetep, peace of heart, in the place of bread and beer. So when he went to this space that was doubly dark, doubly deep, doubly remote, with no water, no air, and no joys of love or copulation, because in other texts, it talks about once you get to the Sekhet, the divine fields of peace, you can sow the seeds in the land and cultivate the land like you used to. You can go to the home that you used to have on earth, similar to that in the spirit realm. You can make love to your wife in the spirit realm and so forth. All the things you did on earth, you can do in the Sekhet, the divine fields of peace. But in this space, deep darkness, no water, no air, no performance of the copulation of love and so forth, no bread, no beer, no consumption, nothing. And Atem says, I have given Aku, illumination. Aku is the third eye. Physiologically, that is the pineal gland, the light sensitive gland. The Aku or Akut is the spiritual pineal gland. Aku also means eye and so forth. He says, I've given Aku in the place of water and air and netchimit, or the joys of love. I've given hetep ab, or balanced hetep, equilibrated hetep ab, heart, in the place of bread and beer. Now let's go back to, real quick, I'm gonna go back to the Honam Su document when we talked about the spiritual anatomy. Just so you can understand what that is. The Aku, the inner eye, the force of divine insight. So we have the Ka, the soul, the Ba, the spirit. Aku, the inner eye. References the eye of Ra is divine insight, clairvoyance, intuition, and wisdom. The related term Aku thus references the eye of Ra, the spiritual eye, which illuminates the darkness. And the physical body is the seat of the pineal gland, which is a light, sensitive gland. Deep within the brain structure, the feminine form is Akut. The Akan term Ehun. Ehun is the ancient Khanit term Aku, which becomes Ehun. And Akan and Ehun, Hum, which is doubled and so forth. Now, Akut, you see the sacred bird of Tahuti, the crested habwi or crested ibis and so forth. You also see the solar disk with the rays and so forth. It is that spirit, but Akut also means, spelled with an I, the eye of Ra or Heru, the fiery light of the sun, a flame goddess. She is the fire Uraeus or Arat on the pair of the so-called Pharaoh's crown and so forth. And then in Akan, you have Ehun, which is the self and so forth. Then you have Ahun, which is the bone marrow, the marrow and the bones, the brain, reduplication of spirit. It's talking about the spirit of illumination. Hum, very deep, very deep, like the eyes in their cavity. Ehunu, the bark of a tree, the rind, the husk, the shell, the rind of a pineapple, talking about that pineal gland and so forth. But you also have Aku, words of power, protective formulae, the magical formulae of Tahuti. But Aku, light, splendor, radiance, brilliance, glorious deeds, splendid acts, virtues, excellences, blessings, benefits. Akuti, the two eyes, see the two eyes, the sun and the moon and so forth. They show like the moon illuminates the darkness so you can find your way through the darkness. When you have that illumination, you can find your way through the darkness. Just like when you're illuminated mentally, you can find your way through the darkness of ignorance. When you're illuminated physically, if it's pitch black outside, when the full moon occurs, then it lights the way so you can find your way and navigate your way through the darkness. And then you have Hum, or Hua in Akan, meaning to be white, pale, light colored, to be bright, to shine, glisten, glitter. That's the same as Ehum, light, splendor, radiance, brilliance. So now to get back to what the text says, he asked the divinity of divine wisdom, give to me or grant to me what Atem has decreed for those who lived in harmony with order. And the divinity of divine wisdom says, okay, I'll put you and send you to Atem. Then he's thrown into a place and he's trying to figure out where he is. It's doubly dark, doubly deep, doubly remote. There's no water and there's no air, but there is Hetep Ab, equilibration, Hetep of the heart. But there are no love joys performed in it. There's no bread and beer in it either. There's nothing to eat or drink. There's no copulation in this deep, dark, doubly remote place that's governed by the deity Atem. Then Atem says, I have given you Aku, divine illumination in this deep, dark place, in the place of water and air, and copulation, the joys of love. I've given you Hetep Ah, peace of heart, equilibration, in place of bread and beer. This is the cosmological foundation when we go deep into the blackness in ritual, going to the Ka and Ka'et, the soul, divine consciousness of Amen and Amenet and so forth. When we go deep into that and we suspend the cessation of food and so forth, that is fasting, fast and pray. There's a cessation of nechimi, love joys or the joys of love, copulation and so forth. There's a cessation of that, cessation of food and drink and so forth. Then there's a purification that takes place, and then the splendor, the illumination that comes from that cessation, fasting and praying and engaging in celibacy. That splendor of Tahuti comes when we go through that ritual process. Then it says, has decreed Atem, the seeing of your face. Surely not shall I suffer from things which pain you. Every divinity shall transmit his thrones during eternity. So he's saying, I'm not going to allow you to lack, like some translations say. Atem is saying, I will not allow you to suffer any lack. So instead of, in this state, instead of giving you water, air, bread, beer, and sexual activity, I've given you Aku, illumination, and Hetep Ab, the equilibration of the heart. And as we said saw in the other text, once your heart is equilibrated, then you have power over your legs, power over your arms, power over your enemy, and you do what your Ka pleases, the will of your Ka, and you can go to the ancestral realm. So now, then he says, decree Atem that surely be surely his career among the princely ones. But he shall rule over your throne. He shall be the heir of the throne and the dweller of the lake of double fire. It is decreed that he may regard me as his second, and that my face shall see the face of the Lord or master. Hold on one second. The Lord or master of Atem. And then he says, what is my duration in life? It is decreed that you are for He in He, meaning eternity of eternity, or millions of years, millions of years of millions of years, a duration of millions of years or eternity. I have granted that he may pass on to the princely ones. I am but doing away with what I did all when earth, this was coming forth from new out of the watery abyss, like unto its former state. I am time and Asar. I've made my transformations into other serpents. Not know mankind these serpents, and not can perceive these serpents, the deities. The double beauty or excellence with which I have made for Asar, greater is he than all of the divinities. I have granted to him to rule in the spirit realm, but his son Heru as his heir upon the throne within the lake of double fire, meaning in the center of earth and so forth. I have made but his seat in the boat. Hold on one second. The boat of eternity, which is the bark of Ra and so forth. Is Heru established upon his throne? So Heru is established upon his throne with his beloved and possessing his remains, but has departed the spirit of Set, greater than all of the divinities. May it be granted to me to bind his spirit, Set's spirit, in the boat of the sun at his will. Fear of the divine members. O my father Asar has done you for me what did for you your father Ra. Ani is saying, everything that Ra did for you, I want you to do for me. He says, may I abide on earth, may I possess my throne, may be strong my heir, may make green my tomb, my beloved who are upon earth. So he's repeating. So Atem, under the direction of Ra, he said, I'm going to make nobody knows the double beauty I've given to Asar. Greater is he than all the divinities. He's ruling in the spirit realm, and his son Heru is ruling in the Atneseret, the lake of double fire. He's ruling on earth, and Asar is ruling in the spirit realm, and all of his beloved, Heru's beloved, are with him and so forth, and they're supporting his throne. And then Ani said, hey, the same thing you did that was done for Asar, I want to be done for me. I want to abide on earth. I want to possess my throne. I want my heir to be strong. I want green to be my tomb, meaning it's flourishing and so forth. I want my beloved, it says friends here, but the multitude of my beloved who are upon this earth may be given my enemies over to the destruction of Serket, the scorpion divinity, for their binding or fettering. I am your son. My father is Ra. You have made for me this same Ankh Ucha Seneb, life, strength, and health. And then it says, Heru established upon his throne. Grant you the course of my life may be that of advancing to a state of being venerated. So he just asked, he learned from, Atem, what Atem did for Asar. Because Asar, of course, was purified, lived in harmony with order and so forth. He was purified eternally. He became ruler in the spirit realm, and his heir, his son Heru, was ruler in the physical realm and so forth. And Set was bound up. The enemies were bound up. He doesn't have any enemies attacking him, and everything in order in creation is set in order. So Ani said, okay, if you did all of that for Asar, I'm Asar Ani. I'm identifying with Asar when I make my transition. Can you do the same thing for me? Can my heir be on his throne? Can I live in the spirit realm and regulate my affairs? May I abide on earth? May my enemies be bound up by Serket and so forth? I want the same thing to happen for me, and I become venerated as an ancestor. Why? Because I lived in harmony with order. My heart was equilibrated. So that whole text is talking about what happens when you equilibrate your heart. But that middle portion is talking about when we invoke the divinity of divine wisdom and say, we see what's going on with these other individuals and they live out of harmony with order, but divinity of divine wisdom to Huti, can you grant for me what Atem has decreed? And Tahuti agrees and sends him to Atem, and then he goes into the deep darkness that's doubly deep and doubly dark and doubly remote with no water, air, or sexual activity happening. And Atem says, after he questions where he is, because his heart is equilibrated, even though it's deep, dark, and nothing's happening, he said, but my heart is content here. I have equilibration of heart, Hetepad. Then Atem says, I have given you, this illumination, akut, in place of water and air and copulation, and I've given you hetep ab in the place of bread and beer, meaning consumption of food. This is the cosmological foundation for fasting and praying and celibacy for ritual alignment. Now, when we release this, and other people jump in front of the parade and start acting like they were reading these texts the whole time and they knew it, you'll know where it comes from. But this same text going back thousands of years, this is what people in the Hoodoo tradition have always been dealing with. When it's time to learn, people are going through a crisis with regard to health. Even with this so-called COVID-19 thing, we go to our root workers, our Odun Sinifo. Okay, this is what's going on. Doesn't matter what the whites in Narrow Spring are saying. We're going to go to the root work and say, we need to be healed, and they go to plant life. They go to plant life, mineral life, and so forth, get the medicines, make the medicines and heal us. How do they do that? They go into, they equilibrate their heart, engage in ritual invocation and so forth. They go into the Ka and Kai, the black substance of space and so forth. They get that illumination from Tahuti. They'll fast, pray, engage in celibacy. You'll see in the Yoruba tradition, Akan traditions, priesthood training, priestesshood training, they have to be celibate for a number of years and so forth, have to have dietary requirements. Sometimes they're engaged in, fasting for a number of days and so forth. Same thing in the Hoodoo tradition. We say, well, it's time to get some medicine, time to communicate with the spirits. You're going to fast, you're going to pray. You're not going to have sexual activity. You're going to go into the spirit realm. When we engage in divination, we're not engaging in copulation right before we go and engage divination. When I'm doing divination for somebody, I'm not doing that. I'm purifying myself. I'm not full of food and so forth. I'm purifying myself, fasting, then doing adebisa divination for individuals to get that clear message and so forth. This has always been part of the tradition. So that's that cosmological foundation for that we wanted to lay tonight. And then we're going to get into some more details in the coming weeks. Okay, so it's a little bit after 10. So we're going to go ahead and end it here. Just want to make sure I didn't miss anything in the chat room.
What's up, Quasi? There was definitely some questions kind of through there.
Okay.
Particularly the sister who was asking about the raven, and JoJo wanted to know about Asar's cake and what that meant.
Okay, I'm just scrolling through. So it was one about the raven. Okay. So it said, I placed non-unknown shrine food outside for wildlife, and the raven visited. It didn't eat much, but for a raven to descend close without shying, I couldn't believe it. Please, what is the meaning of the raven visit? So on one hand, so in our Akan tradition, for example, and different groups have different associations with, animal totems and so forth. But in our Akan tradition, the white-crested raven, which includes the raven in North America, but also the crow, the black crow in North America, same energy complex. That is the animal totem for the Cheneboa animal totem for the Asona Abusia, or Abusia Kur, the Asona Matriclan and so forth. So when you're putting food out like that, and an animal, a spirit of an animal totem, if you were feeling like that's the Nsamanfo sending you, just like you can send a dog, hey, go get this, and they go grab it and bring it back. But the Nsamanfo will send a raven or send a bull or send a, you know, whatever their animal totem is for the clan, they will send that animal totem to go get this and bring it back. Or go to this person, show up at a certain place or in a certain way to communicate or confirm a message that we're giving. And if you put out offerings for them and they accepted the offerings, one of the ways that they will accept it is to send the animal totem to accept it, to confirm what was being done. So that's one of the many ways that they communicate, through sending their pets, quote unquote, or totems to us to confirm either what we've given or what we were contemplating. Like you're trying to figure out a certain thing and you think you figured it out, what direction you should be going. And then, you know, they send the confirmation that confirms exactly what you were contemplating on or took to the shrine. But let me know if that answers that question. Let me see. Okay, so that is, let me pull this up. I believe that was on the, I'm just looking, I'm going to find this reference that you were asking about. Okay. Okay, so this is the part, chapter of giving a heart to, oh, sorry, Ani in the spirit realm. So when it says, may my heart be to me in the house of hearts, may my hati be to me in the house of hati, heart-lung complex, may be to me my heart, may it rest in me. I shall not eat the cakes of Alsar on the east side of the lake of flowers. So you have a number of different lakes in the spirit realm. You have, you know, lakes and fields, and all of them have their own representation. And then when it's talking about certain foods or cakes, or, you know, shetai here, the cakes and so forth. Just for example, when she talked about the raven and she gave food to the Nsamanfo, and then the raven came and consumed the food. In the Hemu Senu, when we're talking about the 42 divinities and the 42 enunciations of Ma'at, and one of them says, I have not stolen the offerings of the deities. So somebody puts some offerings out, and then someone takes the offerings that's for the divinities, you'll be violating, you know, one of the realms of activity of the Abosan. I have not eaten the cakes of Alsar or the ritual offerings of Alsar, and where they are in this particular sense. This particular thing is the east of the side of east side of the Lake of Flowers and so forth. The eastern side is the sunrise and so forth. I have not consumed the ritual offerings that's coming from that region. So it has to do with consumption, but it's dealing with, on the fundamental level, you're not taking the ritual offerings from the divinity. That's a violation. And we can find out, I can look and see which one of the 42 divinities is talking about the, you know, not violating by stealing the offerings of the deities, but that's what that's talking about. And we just went over that, but I don't remember right now which of the 42. From what I remember, it's in the first 12, one of those first 12 deities, but that's what we're addressing.
Okay, and Ajua and Yasa Atu, she wanted to know where you found the picture of a set Sba hovering over Olusi.
Okay, so this is This one is, this is from the tomb of Seti. So if you type in Osiris, Isis, and tomb of Seti, S-E-T-I, you'll find, numerous images of that. And we use that. The tomb of Seti has some really clear, numerous images. One of the more well-preserved tombs, even though there's some damage, but there are many, many scenes that are very clear. One of the more well-preserved ones, so we often use images from that. And they have a number of divinities represented in different scenes and so forth. All right. Okay, was that the...
Yeah, that was the one.
Okay, so was there any other, did I miss any other ones?
I think it's pronounced Madeline Larby. She wanted to know, is an alkaline diet acceptable to divine order?
So in the alkaline diet, what was the second part?
Is it acceptable to divine order?
Okay, so it can be. So what happens is people will learn about acidic diets and alkaline diets, and there's a lot of information out about that. And then some of our people will just take what's been written about it, look at a couple of things and just run with it and say it's kind of one size fits all, and they'll give examples for that. But when we look back, for example, we go back to the okay, so in our Akan tradition, for example, you have, each one of us are born under one of these bosom, one of the Akradin bosom. So dietary requirements are different for different people. When people are reading quote unquote holistic health information, none of it is talking about, well, if you're a child of Awusi or a child of Benna or a child of Abena, how is it tweaked with regard to that? What are the dietary echiwadie or taboos associated with people of the Asona clan or Adriana clan or Ekoana clan or Agona clan and so forth? They're not going to talk about that because they don't embrace or approach dietary practices or restrictions based in ancestral religious culture. They're just really imitating what the whites and their offspring are saying and then blackening some of the information up, or saying, well, holistic health came from our people, so what they're saying is really stolen from us. And it is stolen from us, but it's not put in its proper context, because when they stole it, they didn't steal the entire thing. So some people may say, hey, you need to eat this particular food. That may be a taboo for people in the Asona clan. And same thing with the difference between what's acidic or alkaline. It may be different from somebody's a child of a fiery divinity and someone who's a child of a water divinity, or someone who's a child of a divinity of the wind and so forth. It has to do with who we're connected to. And then it also has to do with our clan. So we have to find out. And if we don't have the detailed information, like the entire catalog of, foods that's specific to our clan, which many of us don't, and even people on the continent, many of them have, lost that information on the surface, then we recreate that by first establishing a relationship with our Nsamanfo. And when we're going to the store, doing what we need to do, or getting the different foods we need to get, the more receptive we become when we bring that back to the shrine, and also connect with other individuals who are involved in the culture, who are, naturally Odun Sinifo, root doctors, Oduyefo, root workers and so forth, who have been working with these herbs and working with these plants, spirits of plants and spirits of minerals and so forth. And they can share with you specific things that they have been working with. But then it also is confirmed when you go to your shrine, deal with your Nsamanfo, and they can show you, oh, for us, we don't eat this food. Or if you had a negative pull towards or push away from reaching out on the fruit stand or vegetable stand to grab this particular vegetable, which you were told has all this, vitamin C or calcium or, iron or whatever you need. And you're like, well, this is high in iron, I need to get this. But maybe you need to get it from a different source, because this particular vegetable is taboo for you, the reason it's taboo is it's going to create disorder within your body, just like an allergy. If everybody needs, you know, protein, and one of your children can get it from a certain food and the other child is, you know, allergic, and they will break out, you know, and all kinds of, you know, hives and so forth, they have to get protein from a different source because they're allergic. And Echiwade on the lowest level are allergens, but on higher levels it's energic, you know, combinations that are not supportive or supported within your clan or within your constitution. So we have to find out who we are first and how we relate to plant life, animal life, mineral life, and so forth. So it's not just a one size fit all when people put these, hey, the alkaline diet, hey, the, you know, water fasting or juice fasting, and they just have these cookie cutter kinds of things. It's not based in tradition. It's not based in an understanding of cosmology. So we have to go and get the confirmation from our own people first. That's our responsibility. And then we can do that. And that's with anything, whether it's diet or anything else.
But I say that was all the questions in the chat room.
Okay. Okay. May I say I appreciate that, assisting with that, so we can get everybody's questions answered. So, okay, so we're going to go ahead and end it here, but we will be posting this up. If you have any questions, of course, just send us an email. You can still share this information when we post up the class, but then we'll post a excerpt from the class. We'll post it on YouTube and so forth. So people, if they would like to register late, they can still register late, of course, because they're going to get the original this week's recording, as well as all the future live sessions. So please let people know so we can get people, you know, on track. So, okay, so Yawda, I say we thank everybody for joining in, and Yabesha Bio. We will meet again. That's it.